Putin has been invited to visit Vietnam twice, first by then President Vo Van Thong in October 2023, and again in March by Vietnam's most powerful man, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam, Nguyen Phu Trong. Despite Russia being sanctioned by the West and its allies and Putin under an arrest warrant, Vietnam continues to maintain friendly relations with Russia. So how close is Vietnam, Ronan, how close is Vietnam to Russia?
Yeah, so Vietnam maintains very friendly relationship with Russia for a couple of reasons. Number one, the ties with Russia basically signifies the importance in terms of military and energy needs. So Russia is the major weapon supplier to Vietnam, and also is a key partner in the oil and gas exploration, right? So given these two considerations, they are going to maintain a somewhat close relationship. But that being said, it doesn't mean that, Vietnam is going to double down on its ties with Moscow. Why? Because like bamboo basically means sturdy and yet flexible. And like the comparison between Vietnam and the Philippines currently under the Marcos administration is trying to balancing against China, whereas in the case of Vietnam, they are trying to hedging. So the position is, right in between the U.S. and China, and if now we're talking about Russia, so they're trying to make sure that they keep a roughly equal distance among those great powers, so that they can still employ the bamboo diplomacy.
Professor Huynh, if I can ask you about the ideological links between Vietnam and Russia and how that compares with the same ideology with China.
It's really interesting because Vietnam received the support from both Russia at that time, the Soviet Union, and China's. However, we cannot say that China and Vietnam, we have some confrontation in the South China Sea and even in the northern borders. And we have the 1979 skirmishes between the Vietnamese and the Chinese. And at that time, Xi Jinping, he said that China conducted the military forces to take Vietnam election. And it caused a widespread skeptical attitudes among the Vietnamese people, even Vietnamese leaders. However, with the strong support of Russia, the Soviet Union before, and even after the collapse of the Cold War, Russia has been fostering ties with Vietnam, and we have the comprehensive strategic partnership, and the relationship has gone really, really well with a lot of infrastructure, energy, industry and human resources training, and especially with oil and gas cooperation in the South China Sea. We know that many countries, and under the pressure of China, they withdrew their oil energy project in the South China Sea, like some countries, Spain, for instance, India, for instance. However, Russian companies have been trying to stay in the South China Sea there. And I would say that Russia is also really important for Vietnam because it is a permanent member of the UN national security. So Vietnam needs support from Russia in many issues ranging from military, diplomatically and economically. And recently we possessed the military equipment from Russia. And on those many scholars recently, they are trying to navigate the rhetoric that Vietnam has sought to diversify its military equipment to other regional countries like Israel, South Korea. You're right on this. However, Vietnam still considers Russia to be a really important military supply.
The way that you described that relationship, where you said, in fact, that there have been hostilities and conflict with China in the past, whereas in Russia that hasn't existed. Am I getting the sense that, in fact, the Russia relationship might actually be warmer and maybe deeper compared to China?
Yes, this is a concern of Vietnam because you know that Putin and Xi Jinping, they vote that the relationship is has no limit at all. However, to Vietnam, Vietnam is trying to balance between Western powers and Russia and China, because Russia and China fit into Vietnam policy framework, they both considered to be great powers and traditional allies. However, in the case that Vietnam and Russia, they stood shoulder to shoulder to fight back the U.S. invasion in Vietnam. And I think that in the long run, the Vietnamese leader will continue to value the relationship with Russia.